The entirety of Fusion World's set 2 Blazing Aura has finally been revealed, and there's a couple of spicy nuggets in there. Let's jump into it. Kicking it off, I just want to get the vanillas out of the way. We have one from costs 1 to 4. Sometimes it stops at 3, sometimes it doubles up at 3. Either way, every color got 4 vanillas, some more relevant than others, but I don't think there's anything crazy to say there. If they're a 1 drop, they're 15, 2, 20, 3, 25, or 30. The only difference there being that sometimes their name is relevant, or sometimes their trait are relevant. Out of the 16, I'd say there's about 2-ish in every single color that you may want to use based on some card's ability or some synergies that are available in set 1 and set 2. But otherwise, nothing too crazy there, and whenever the synergies do come up, I'll make sure to bring them up in the breakdown. Jumping over to red though, we've got a 4-drop Kakunsa 20k, bunch of different tags on her, 10k combo. Activate main once per turn, switch this card to active mode, then this card gets minus 5k power for the turn, thus turning her into a dual attacker, but it's 20k and 15k, which means she probably is more effective at dealing with boards more than anything else, but not a crazy card. Naturally can also be played off of Topku. Not too many synergies there, just a decent card for sealed, I guess, but not something that I think is going to see a ton of play. Then we've got Kato Pesla, a 3-drop 20k, 10k combo with a on play, when attacking, when KO'd, choose up to one of your opponent's battle cards and it gets minus 5k power for the turn. I think the coolest usage for this card is the fact that you get an on play and when attacking, but being able to give a card minus 10k when it comes onto the board isn't something that you can't get elsewhere for better tags. Now it is a 10k combo, which is neat, and you get a little bit of a bonus on when it gets KO'd. But naturally, I don't think this card has much of a home, although I do think the fact that we can have cards that trigger essentially whenever is kind of a neat usage. Then we've got Ganos, the battle card Slayer, 3-drop 20k 0 combo with Universe 4 and Tournament Power traits. Permanent, this card gets plus 25k power while it's in battle with an opponent's battle card, effectively making it a 3-cost 45k attacker anytime you're attacking a battle card, effectively making it removal that your opponent then needs to attack into to get rid of. Although I do think while it's a neat slot in, it's something you can play for cheap in Topku. It's a bit of a tough add when you're looking at a 0 combo cost, especially in a color that some of the best cards in that color are already 0 cost, a lot of which are already removal. But there is value in saying that if your opponent has a big battle card, you can invest 1 or 3 energy and be able to actually contest into it without comboing a bunch of cards in your hand. So there are some meta situations in which I do think it might make sense to actually include a couple of copies of this card. But for the most part, I think you're going to have to really key in on when those meta moments are, because otherwise I think you are hurting yourself more often than not by including this card, as good as it is at removing battle cards. Do note that the way that this plays out, I think it also accounts for being in battle defensively, which is really cool, which means it's not the easiest thing for your opponents to get rid of. But of course, being a 3-cost 20k means that it's not all that hard for removal to get around to it. So things to consider there. Moving on over to Universe 6, we've got Kefla, 2-drop 20k critical with an on-play, add up to 1 card from your life to your hand. It is nice to see a few more self-awakeners. We did not see a ton of them throughout the majority of the reveal season, so the fact that we get more, especially in red, which wants to like turbo awaken, the more options we have available, the better. And it's actually kind of nice that we now have a 2-drop 20k critical. Previously, we only really had the Vegeta from set 1, or I think it was the starter deck. And the fact that that stayed at 15k really nerfed the usability of that card, even at the cost of 5k combos. I think Kefla is a nice upgrade to that card. And while it might not see a ton of play, is an additional option for something like an all-crit deck, or just a deck that wants more awakening options. The more we have available here, then the more consistent decks can awaken. Then from there, we've got Quintella, a 2-drop 20k 5k combo on play. Choose up to one of your opponent's battle cards with 15k power or less and KO it. I do think the KO stuff is a lot worse than red. There's a lot of KO protection going into set 2, and I think red needs to lean on the negging portion of its removal as opposed to KOing when something is at a certain threshold. Especially at 15k, you're not really hitting a bunch of relevant targets. Naturally, this is not better in like Beerus, where you can take a 25k down to 15 and then finish it off. And it does seem that all of the God of Destructions combo with Beerus in some way to get that removal going. Almost all of them are removal, and all of them combo really well with Beerus. So there is a world in which, more of a meme deck than anything else, you would be looking to build a God of Destruction deck that combos really well with Beerus. But at the moment, I think with where set 2 is moving onwards, KO abilities are not where you want to be, and you really want to lean on the neg side of things. Then we've got Kaba, 3-cost 20k 10k combo, blocker, then permanent on your opponent's turn. This card gets 5k power, so that allows you to be able to play him off a top coup since he's a 20k and then kind of chill there being a 25k blocker. It's fine, but blockers aren't amazing in this set. And just about any deck that's looking to get through this blocker is not going to have too many issues on that front. Blockers just really need to do something more on the level of like 4-drop cooler, to be totally honest, to be something that you want to actively use as just a blocker. And because of that, I can just see Kaba not really see a ton of usage. Then we go back to Universe 6 with Kale. 3-drop 35k 5k combo with the permanent opponent's turn. This card gets a minus 20,000 power, effectively meaning that it's a 15k defensively, but 35k offensively is really sweet. Doesn't directly synergize with Topku, but can be played off of 4-drop Kefla, which is really neat. So then you get your 20k attacker, 35k attacker, and of course on the defense, not so much. But if you're just leaning to be hyper aggressive, you can do that as well. And if we look back at set 1 support, we have the 5-drop Kefla. I don't think you're doing this, but you could. The 5-drop Kefla says on play up to 1k with the cost of 3 from your hand. So this is a legal target, which means if you're trying to experiment with more Universe 6 stuff, then technically there's support there as well. To further extend, we've got another Kefla. Really thought that the SR was going to be the only one that we have, but this one also synergizes with the 4-drop SR really well. 3 cost, 20k power, 10k combo. Nice numbers as well. With non-play, if your leader is awakened, draw 1 card. And there's no secret that this plays really well with the 4-drop that looks to play 3-drop tournament of power cards. So on Topku, you discard 1, but then you get to play Kefla, draw 1 card, replaces the card you discarded, and then you get to play the 3-drop Kefla, which now allows you to also draw an additional card, replacing itself, and effectively making sure you have enough ammo in your hand to keep on going. I don't know if this is the card that's really going to see a ton of play, but I think, hey, it's just a solid card that replaces itself and combines with the other Kefla to be just good follow-up and keeping up the gas. I think there's a couple of things you might want to do alternatively, but the fact that the option is there is really nice. And of course, like I've said many, many times now, the 4-drop Kefla is a strong 4-drop play. Even if you're not paying 1 energy in Topku and instead using the full 4 energy somewhere else, the fact that you're able to play off what is effectively a 25k, draw a card, play another battle card that in itself also draws a card, can line up for some really solid plays in any of the red decks, even if you're not going to be playing it for 1 off Topku. Back to the Gods of Destruction, we've got Sidra, 1 cost 0 combo. Oh my. With a 15k power threshold on play, choose up to 1 of your opponent's battle cards with 5k power or less and KO it. So once again, a God of Destruction stuff there. I really don't understand why this has 0 combo power. It's a very mediocre card. Sure, in combination with Beers, you can get rid of 15Ks. And then obviously it combines with like other removal spells to be able to make even more work of that. But I mean, when you compare like Whis, that alternatively is able to get rid of something, it's a 1 cost, it has 15k power, so that those numbers need to come off of somewhere. Anyways, there's a lot of things here that kind of make the numbers make sense, but in the way that things play out, I think it's more of a gimmick card than anything else. But the fact that it exists, and once again keeps on pushing this God of Destruction theme, where God of Destructions are just going to destroy, KO, neg things, and get things off the board, and naturally combos really well with Beerus. Moving away from the gods, we've got Son Goku, 3 cost, 25k, 5k combo, critical. Nothing more, nothing less. And the all crit deck is coming together, this being something that you cannot play off of Topku, so something to note there. But nevertheless, hey, 3-drop 25k crit is a good stat line. All you're sacrificing there away from a vanilla is just 5k combo, which combo power is very important, don't get me wrong. But here, if you are leaning into that critical strategy, it is nice to get a little buff there. Also is a Universe 7, which means in U7Q, this is a 30k crit as well, which are some pretty sick numbers. Moving on from that, we've got Basil. So yes, the trio, the Dangers are also coming back, and they all kind of cross synergize with each other in some way. So here we have the Basil 1 cost of 5k combo, 5k power. On play, look at the top 5 cards top of your deck, reveal up to 1 non-Basil card with a cost of 4 or less and tournament power and its special traits added to your hand. Place the rest of the bottom of your deck in any random order. I don't totally understand why this has to be non-Basil. I understand they don't want you chaining into it, but this doesn't seem so powerful that needs to be a thing that was even asked of. I don't know. I don't think it needs that restriction, but regardless, you now have your Tournament of Power Searcher. So oftentimes, things that'll lean us away from just every single deck using 1-drop cantrips is the fact that searchers will be more specific and more powerful for what decks are trying to do. So the fact that we have this one for Tournament Power is very much welcome, especially given that the R-type wants a large amount of Tournament Power cards in the same deck to make all the synergies work. Moving on from him, we've got Papa Roni, 1-drop, 5k power, 10k combo. Activate main once a return for 3. Look at the top 7 cards of your deck and play up to 1 Anilaza with 30k power or less. Place the rest at the bottom of your deck in a random order. At the moment, the only Anilaza we have is the vanilla that we were showing off in the beginning. So effectively what you're doing is you're paying 1 early game to then pay 3 later in the game to then play a vanilla not out of your hand. So it's not costing you a card out of your hand, but you're doing a bunch of setup to be able to play a 30k vanilla, which in itself is like fine. I mean, it's not fine. It's actually actively bad. But hey, if you want to do that, by all means, go for it. Not much else to say there. You're just playing a vanilla at cost. It's not even cheaper, but at the very least, it's not costing you a card out of your hand. Then we've got Piccolo, which is another Master Roshi. 1-drop 5k combo on play, draw 1 card. Not much to say there. It is just an in archetype cantrip. Then we've got Frieza, 1-drop 15k combo. I'm actually kind of interested in this one. As a permanent on your turn, if your leader is awakened, this card gets a 5k power, and it is a Universe 7. That's relevant because we know that U7 decks were playing TN, the 1-drop TN, because on the Awakened side, it's a 1-drop 20k. It's really good with swarming your opponent. Now you get the 20k for free in any leader that's awakened, and then in U7Q, they effectively all become 25ks, which is much more relevant. So I think the fact that we can kind of lean into swapping this card with TNs, even though TN's a 10k combo, which I think there is some accounting there for how good that is, still lends itself to be a neat combo and something to look forward to in terms of upgrades for Universe 7, and still a fine inclusion in any other red strategy that's just trying to be aggressive. That the fact that you can just always have access to a 1-drop 20k now is really nice. Then we've got a Vegeta 3-cost, a 20k 10k combo. On play, choose all of your opponent battle cards with 5k power or less and KO them. Very reminiscent of the 3-drop Gohan, although I think the combo power is better on this one. Just get rid of all your weenies, but again, KOing isn't as strong now, though I will say that there are a number of low-cost cards in set 2 that you probably really want to get rid of, things like 1-drop Bulma in yellow and stuff like that. So I do think there's value in a lot of cards that get rid of a bunch of weenies. Green has like this Earthling thing that it's going for, and that is also a lot of 1-drop weenies. So the fact that we have more cards that lean into getting rid of those are very handy. I don't think there's going to see a bunch of play, but the fact that it's an option is very much welcome. Then we've got Bergamo. We are going to get all of the different dogs here with set 2. This one being a 2-cost, a 15k, 10k combo. It's a little bit off curve until you realize the permanent on your turn. All your battle cards with Trio de Dangers in their special traits get 5k power, effectively meaning all of the dogs, including Bergamo, get that 5k bump, meaning he's actually on your turn at the very least a 2-drop 20k. Nothing crazy there, but hey, I do like Lord abilities, and this scales with the future, right? It's not saying red Trio de Dangers, and this is something of a theme that I want us to kind of keep in mind as we keep on seeing cards. Lots of cards refer to traits or names, but they don't specify color, which is really cool because at some point, set 3 is going to be black. We're not too sure what's happening with set 4 and 5, but at some point we're going to get multicolor sets. And these are going to be really cool support cards for cards that we get in the future. So whenever we do return to Trio de Dangers, we always have to keep in mind that like, hey, there's this 2-drop Bergamo that actually busts them out by 5. So if we get things like dual attackers and stuff like that, they become even better with cards like these. So just not relevant for set 2, but kind of in the back of our mind, let's always remember that these cards exist because we can always return to them in the future. And there's a few cards that will actually point that out as we keep on breaking out what set 2 has for us. To close out the trio, we have Lavender, which is a 2-cost, a 15k, 10k combo. When attacking, choose up to one of your opponent's battle cards. It gets minus 5k power for the turn for each card with Trio de Dangers in his special traits in your battle area. A little bit under curve here. It's a 15k, not a 20k, but it does have 10k combo power as opposed to 5k combo power. So it is comparable to Hit in that sense, although, you know, Hit self-awakens you, so it makes it all that much better there. But if you just happen to have Bergamo in there as well, or on turn 1, you ended up playing Basil, Search, find Lavender, go into Lavender. Now you're giving something minus 10k, and then the turn after that, maybe you go into Bergamo. So you got that set up there where you're removing things off board. And of course, each Lavender sees itself. So if you have 2 Lavenders, then they're adding into that. So I don't think it's anything amazing, but I do think negging is more important in set 2, as I had mentioned previously. And Lavender does lend itself to scaling to that if you are running Trio de Dangers. Then we've got Ribrianne, 4-cost, 20k, 10k combo, double strike, and thus the second double striker with combo power that we see. The first one obviously being the Gohan that we saw many weeks ago. And now Ribrianne, one that you can play for 1 energy in top Q, of course, just being a 20k. But still, the fact that for 1 energy, you're able to get a double striker out in a very key moment lends itself to being a very scary card and something that you always have to keep in mind. Because, of course, we can play around other decks playing their double strikers because they cost 5 energy or 6 energy or however have you. But now in red, or at least for top Q, it's always an option that for 1 energy, they can do that. So you always have to think about your opponent's sequencing and thinking, hey, if I allow my opponent to be able to get me down to double strike range, am I able to defend a double striker if they end up having it in hand and 1 energy and have not used their leader ability yet? So those mind games are very, very big, very important. And the fact that it's a 10k combo means that the cost of running it in your deck is pretty low because at the very least, it'll always be a decent defensive card as well. So something to keep in mind. Very, very relevant card. We've finally broken through the red battle cards into the extra cards, and honestly, they have quite a few saucy ones. We've got the 1-cost Saved by a Barrier, as Android Universe 7 and turn with power as its traits. Activate battle, opponent's turn. Choose your leader up to 1 of your battle cards. It gets 20k power for the battle. So plus 20k for 1 is very typical for what we've seen from defensive extra cards. Then if the chosen card is a battle card, that card can't be KO'd in a battle for the turn. Very cool, effectively saying this card will remain on board guaranteed. And as red gets more floodgates, it's actually pretty spooky. Or maybe once we get multicolor leaders and we can include this card with, other decks that want to have things that stick on board. The fact that we can use this with like Frost or whatever, anything like that, or cards of the same similar design leads a lot to this card's scalability in future design. So pretty cool with this card. From there, we got Clash of the Strongest. And I think this is going to be one of the swingiest cards on whether people totally hate this card, think it's trash, think it's really good. This is going to make a lot of people mauled on either end, whether it's a dead card in hand or because it ends the game. 2 cost, Tournament of Power, extra card. Only turn power. No Saiyan, no U6, no U7, none of that. Clash of the Strongest is an activate main. Choose all your battle cards with tournament power in their special traits, and they get 10k power for the turn. This card has the potential of being absolutely absurd. If you can set up your board with having 2 or 3 cards before you use this card, and it's not hard to do, especially when you consider that for 1 energy, you can get 2 battle cards with Top Coup. And I do think that you play this almost exclusively with Top Coup. Already pays for itself in the amount of combo power it gives, right? Usually for 2 costs, you're able to get about 20k power offensively, maybe 40k depending on how you're doing it. But the fact that for 1 card, you're able to spread that across multiple attacks is already big, because if you get into the magic numbers of even just 30k and 30k into a 20k lead, you're forcing more card advantage out of their hand than kind of like the singular swing you would get with the 20k. And then that scales even more, assuming you're even able to get more battle cards on the board, right? So if you protect your board of say 2 cards on turn 4, then the turn after that, you play 2 more cards. Now off of 4 cards, you're able to get 10k power across the board. I think it's one of those very scary cards that can do a lot of damage, can do a lot of work, but is also going to be a dead card that does nothing and only does stuff when you have it on board. So I think if you ever include this in your deck, it is really just a 1 of, maybe a 2 of. But at the end of the day, I think it's a really neat card, and I think it's one that's going to catch people off guard. It's one of those cards that I'm probably going to play around just to say that I did it and really make some people mauled. But it has its checks and balances. I think it's a really neatly balanced card because of what it needs, but also because of the impact if you're able to set up properly. Moving on to blue, we kick it off with Kibito. 2-drop, 15k, 10k combo. 1k, look at 5 cards from the top of your deck, reveal 1 extra card and add it to your hand. Place the rest at the bottom of your deck in a random order. It's a searcher for an extra card, but it costs 2. It requires a KO, which means your opponent's going to have to go into it. I don't know. It's an attacker that replaces itself early in the game, but it's a 15k, so it doesn't scale into the late game. That's not much to say there. Then we've got Goku Black, and a lot of really cool Goku Black cards in set 2, which is going to make revisiting set 1 Goku Black a lot of fun. 3-drop, 20k, 10k combo when attacking, which means you can get multiple value out of this, which is nice. Look at 3 cards from the top of your deck and play up to 1 Zamasu with a cost of 1. Place the rest at the bottom of your deck in a random order. So I really do like this is a 20k that sets up a 1-drop, which naturally can set up a combo with the Goku Black leader afterwards, because you can bottom deck it away. And we already do have a few Zamasus that have some good usage there. Of course, from set 1, we've got the vanilla, the blocker, and then the 1-drop that gets rid of other 1-drops, which is some fun sequencing there where you can use the when attack and get the on play from the 1-drop, bottom deck a thing, and kind of snowball from there, which is really neat. But we're also going to see another Zamasu after that. So just upping the consistency of a deck that really wants the most consistency across Goku Blacks and Zamasus is really, really solid. And I think we have enough of a density now of solid Zamasus and solid Goku Blacks that the deck is kind of where it needs to be at this point. And at this point, we're just at a position where we need to figure out ratios. Additionally to the set 1 Zamasus, we get another 1-drop Zamasu in set 2, which is a 5k power, 5k combo with a permanent. If you have a Goku Black battle card, this card can't be KO'd. But the fact that it's a 1-drop means it's kind of wonky. But of course, you play the 3-drop, you swing, you get this one on board, it can't be KO'd. So that's kind of the setup there. And it has the on play, they get to look at top 5 cards at the top of your deck. We're up to 1 Goku Black, which is great. More consistency to find the 6-drop exactly where we want to be, or the 4-drop that they revealed a few weeks earlier, which is also decent as well. Add it to your hand. Place the rest of the bottom of your deck in a random order. Just more consistency, kind of whatever exactly the deck wanted. Moving on from the Goku Black stuff, we've got Gotenks, which is not the support I was expecting at all. And surprisingly is Vegeta support, like starter deck Vegeta. And I didn't think they were going to be this direct with the support that this deck gets. So it's a 3-cost, 20k, 10k combo. Good numbers all around. With an activate main, return this card to its owner's hand. If your leader is Vegeta, play up to 1 Gotenks with a cost of 4 from your hand in rest mode. And then naturally, the one that you're aiming to play is the SR from the starter deck that allows you to get a Trunks and a Gohan from your drop. It comes in rest mode, so it's not like you're chaining plays, which is probably more balanced that way. But the fact that in Vegeta, you're getting like more ways to recur, cheat costs, and kind of get a flow of cards going is really nice, especially since Vegeta is getting some decent support, and I think is definitely one of the leaders, especially that was on like the cusp of really being a part of the whole rotation of the meta. With the additional support, I think it really does get there, and I think Gotenks is like kind of a good nudge towards that direction, especially with how aggressive Vegeta wants to be in comboing cards to say at that 7 hand size. The more we have in terms of being able to push out the recursion to keep comboing cards is very much welcome. Then we've got Zamasu Fused, which lends itself to being some of the more interesting cards in set 2. Not that I think it totally solves what we're trying to do with the Zamasu leader, but just kind of individually, the cards are very interesting in my opinion. So we've got the 5 cost 30k 0 combo. When KO'd, if you have 7 or fewer cards in your hand, play up to 1 Zamasu Fused with a cost of 6 from your hand. We don't have a Zamasu of 6. What are you talking about? Well, we'll just jump right into what that is and then kind of have a conversation about the cards altogether. We've got Zamasu Fused 6 cost. And naturally, this is the scene from when it gets sliced up and ends up deciding to cover up the entirety of the sky in the universe. It is a 40k, big numbers here, 5k combo, critical. Ooh. Auto once per turn when your opponent plays a battle card. If your life is at 1, which naturally as Zamasu staying at 1 is a little bit easier if you can constantly regen your life. Choose all your opponent's battle cards and return them to their owner's hand. Card's neat. It is the kind of effect that I was really hoping they would give the fused Zamasu stuff, but unfortunately I think it's so easy for your opponent to kind of play around. I'm trying to figure out in what ways you could force your opponent to have to play in a way to kind of play into this that's not advantageous, as opposed to just playing a Zeno, board wiping. I do think that this has the benefit that you're forcing your opponent off curve. So if you're able to deal with their board and then you have this 6-drop Zamasu Fused on board, now they're in a position where if they only have 5 energy, they can't curve out into like a double striker or golden freezer, whatever play they might have. So they're going to have to be off curve to make their plays. I think in that regard, it's neat. Although I don't know that blue needs it, but I love these style of cards and they're definitely something that I'm going to find myself experimenting with to see how we can get the most usage out of it and at least having just a good time with it. From there, we've got SS3 Son Goku 4 cost 30k 0 combo. Activate main once per turn. Discard 3 cards with Saiyan in their traits from your hand. Switch this card to active mode, and this card gets 25k power for the turn. Now, there is a value in having a 4-drop dual attacker, especially one that initially swings for 30k and then swings for 25k, which it needs to give the power bump. Because if you're dumping 3 Saiyans out of your hand, odds are you are ditching about 25k combo out of your hand. So the fact that you're doing that at a minimum is nice, and naturally you do get to swing twice at a 4-drop. So this does help in Blue's desire to want to stay at low hand size. And in Vegeta, you can kind of get away with it because your leader's already getting a bump. So I think there's something there. Obviously, it helps in lowering your hand size while still getting value out of them. But it remains to be seen how much this card actually sees use. But it's an interesting card at the very least, especially if we ever get any synergies for cards that attack multiple times. From Goku, we've got a Goten, 1 cost of 5k, power 10k combo. On play, choose up to 1 of your opponent's battle cards will cost 2 or less, and return it to its owner's hands. Nothing crazy there, just some cheap removal. Scales much higher if you have 3 cost Vegeta on board. That allows you to lower the cost of your opponent's cards. It's fine. I don't think it's anything crazy. I don't think blue needs this card specifically, given all the other bounces it have, but the additional options is nice. Then we've got Videl, which is kind of an interesting look at what they might be aiming to do with skillless cards in the future. 1 cost 5k, power 10k combo, activate main once per turn for 1 energy. If you have 7 or fewer cards in your hand, play up to 1 skillless battle card with a cost of 3 or less from your hand. I will say, where Pepperoni was not the way to do it, this is probably the way to do it. You know, for 1 energy, you're able to cheat out of 3 costs, which is very reminiscent of the Kidku strategies in Dragon Ball Masters. So I think for 1 energy, being able to pump out 25k attackers is very solid. Only get to do it once, and then you don't have the level of recursion that I think you would love. But hey, I think this is definitely leaning in the right direction if we want to push vanilla strategies. They often tend to be a lot of fun. It's definitely the better way, in my opinion, to be able to support vanilla style archetypes. So more cards like Videl, I think, are very much welcome to kind of push this kind of strategy, and definitely something I'm going to find myself messing with. Then we've got Beerus, which is a 3 cost 20k 10k combo. When attacking, KO 1 of your other battle cards, just up to 1 of your opponent's battle cards and return to its owner's hand. While I think the variability of being able to choose anything is really nice, I think the KOing of your own cards, even if you can do something like KO a Kibito and like get an extra card out of it, or there's a couple of other blue cards that want to be KO'd. Zamasu Fused wants to be KO'd, for example. I don't necessarily think this is where you want to be with that, but the fact that the option is there for soft KOing is nice, because to make those cards relevant, you need cards like Beerus to make them work. Then we've got Bulma, which will be very similar to a card that we've seen before. 1 cost, 5k, power 10k combo. On play, you have 7 or fewer cards in your hand, choose up to 1 of your Vegeta cards, and it gets 10k power for the turn. And again, additional Vegeta support, and it does not stop. It will keep on going. But for the keen-eyed of you, you'll kind of recognize that this is very similar to another card. One cost Haru Maki, which kind of has the same ability. Only difference here is that it specifies Trunks' future, whereas the Bulma says Vegeta card. I don't know if it's changed in templating. I don't think it's that big of a deal. They both work the exact same way, regardless of how they are worded. Between the two, just something to note. Haru Maki is a decent card and obviously is really good in Trunks because you're able to bounce it back and forth and keep on using it. In Vegeta, you do only get the usage once, but you are able to cheat it out with this 4-drop Vegeta, which is very neat. So you get that usage there of being a little bit more aggressive, less recursion, but you get to play it off on curve more. So 30k 4-drop 0 combo on play. Play up to 1 Bulma with a cost of 1 from your hand, effectively turning this Vegeta into a 40k or your leader into a 30k with an activate main. Once per turn, if you have 7 or fewer cards in your hand, this card and your leader get 5k power for the turn. So now this card's a 35k, your leader's a 35k, which actually goes to a 40k, and then the Bulma comes in, boosts one of them. So honestly, the fact that they're leaning into this whole Vegeta strat, I think is going really well. And this is definitely the type of support I think Vegeta needed to take it over the edge. So I think Vegeta being one of the spookier blue decks, blue in general really is kind of getting the above the curve in terms of the additional common, rare, uncommon support from the set, which is nice because it is the color that needed the most. And I think there's a good level of diversification between builds that are going to make it fun to play or build each individual blue leader, as opposed to just kind of bulk packaging them all and just swapping leaders. So that's going to be a good time. Looking forward to that. And to top off, we've got another Vegeta, another 4-drop, another 30k, another 0 combo. So a little spooky there. When attacking, if your leader is Trunks, so a little bit of a swap out there, look at the bottom card of your deck and play up to 1 blue battle card with cost of 2 or less. So I do like that we have now a repeatable way to be able to play out our 2-drop 30k Trunks that go to the bottom of the deck. Very much welcome. So the fact that we have like Time Machine 2.0, which is arguably better because it's also a battle card, but it costs more, but you're getting additional body on top of it. And if they can't get rid of your Vegeta, you get to do it over and over and over again. So I think it's a nice addition to that archetype, in my opinion. Then we've got my 1 cost 5k power 10k combo. On play, choose up to 1 of your opponent's battle cards and reduce its cost by 1 for the turn. I don't necessarily love this because you kind of need to line it up like, hey, it's a combo of a 1 cost plus some other type of removal to kind of even do anything, especially when we've got 3 cost Vegeta that does it for free. Well, essentially for free on its permanent. Mine's kind of nice because it doesn't require any hand size, anything to be able to get it off, but I feel a little bit iffy about it. I will say though, it is kind of nice that in the Trunks deck, you now just have a 1 cost that allows you to be able to hit 4 costs with the bounce ability, which is pretty relevant. So I think that add consistency there is kind of neat. From there, we're jumping into the extra cards, and we start with Divine Hammer. 2 cost Supreme Kai Patara extra card, activate battle. You have a Zamasu fused battle card, which is a little bit iffy in terms of conditions. Choose your leader up to 1 of your battle cards and it gets plus 30k power for the battle. So it is above curve, but the above curve is kind of required when you consider that you need a fused Zamasu on board. I will say, Fused Zamasu, one of the stickier cards on board. The 4-drop is hard to remove. The 5-drop plays the 6-drop, and then the 6-drop just kind of sitting there being that big body. So they are hard to remove, and odds are if they're on board, they're not going anywhere. But I do think it's a little suspect to use Divine Hammer knowing that you need to fuse them also on board, and otherwise it is legitimately a dead card in your hand. So a decent amount of payoff, but I don't know if it's one that is worth the amount of like conditional of where it may just be a dead card in your hand. Then we've got Blades of Judgment, 1 cost extra card, activate main or battle. Look at top 5 cards at the top of your deck, reveal up to 1 Supreme Kai in its special traits, so itself, any of the other Zamasu cards, and add it to your hand. Place the rest at the bottom of the deck in a random order. I think the fact that it's activate battle is kind of neat because it means that you can hold up energy for other plays, and if your opponent doesn't play into it, at the very least, you're able to kind of up your consistency. But I don't particularly love it. I think it's kind of a whatever card. It is just a common though. We're going to find those in the set. From there, we've got a Polymerization. All right, maybe not Polymerization, but if you squint, it does a pretty good imitation. In reality, we've got Fusion of Evil Power. 3 cost extra, activate main, place 1 Goku Black and 1 Zamasu card from your hand or your battle area at the bottom of your deck. Draw 2 cards, then play up to 1 Fuse Zamasu with a cost of 4 from your hand. I don't know. I am someone who very strongly pushed for fusion mechanics in the game, and it does seem like they kind of got that in with these extra cards. We're going to see later down the line, we've kind of got a cell card that does very similar things. And I don't necessarily think this is the way I envisioned it. I understand it's a simple way to do it that's like less archetype dependent, but I don't necessarily think just a 1, like this just gets out Fuse Zamasu for 1 cheaper, but with the conditional that you need the Goku Black and the Zamasu between your hand or battle area. It replaces them, so you're not necessarily losing the cards, but you are losing the card in Fusion of Evil Power in itself. You're not getting, like, what are we doing here, right? Like, yes, there's a world in which turn 1, you play a Zamasu, turn 2, you play a Goku Black, then on turn 3, you do this, you've effectively cheated out the 4 cost 1 turn earlier. But I don't necessarily think this is where the deck wants to be, especially since on 3 cost, you probably want to play Vegeta anyways, since it sets up like the remainder of your deck. So I think this isn't really it. I don't think this is an exciting way to do fusions. This very much just feels like polymerization in my opinion. I think it's cool that it exists. I think at the very least, they got fusion in somehow. I just wish it was a little bit more interesting. From there, we've got Awakening to Super Saiyan Rose. 3 cost, activate main, choose all cards with Earthling in their special traits. And oftentimes, a lot of those will be your own cards. A lot of the cheap 1-drops and 2-drops will be your own. So you get to return those to your hand and then return them to the owner. So for whatever reason, your opponent also has Earthlings, though most of them will kind of be in that lower cost range. A lot of the cantrips. The only things that you have to concern yourself in the higher cost are things like Gohans tend to be the scarier ones at the moment that are also Earthlings. Then if you turn 3 or more cards, draw 2 cards. So the fact that it's kind of like a bounce for like all your cantrips that you're then able to draw an additional 2 cards of is fine. But the fact that it costs 3, I don't necessarily think there's a card that's going to see a ton of play. Then we've got Absolute Lightning, which is a card that blue desperately wanted. And the fact that I got it now makes blue kind of spooky. It is a 3 cost extra card with an activate main. Choose up to 1 of your opponent's battle cards, unconditional, and place that at the bottom of its owner's deck. Very, very solid. Bottom decking gets around most battle protection besides the one that says it can't get removed from the board, which makes it really, really good. The fact that it can hit any target means that blue can now play a game against most anything, no matter how big it goes. The fact that bottom decks is arguably some of the best removal in the game. So this is really good. I think 3 is like on the cusp of where it allows it to be viable, but I do think this is a card that's going to see play because just being able to, for 3, be able to stop anything, and then you're still in blue, which means you have the ability to play 1 energy to recur something out of your drop or make some plays happen, hold up an energy, kind of be defensive after that. I think lends itself really well to what blue wants to do. This is exactly the kind of card it needed, and I think is one of those things, few things, like don't get me wrong, I think blue got a number of things, but this is one of those key things that really push blue to viability going into set 2. From there, we move on to green, which is kind of one of my favorite colors because I'm a big ramp fanatic myself. We got 1-drop Kami, 5k power, 10k combo on play. Choose up to 1 of your opponent's battle cards with a cost of 1 or less and KO it, which is neat. Green is definitely in a position where sometimes you just kind of stare at 1-drops. And when you are thinking of things like 1-drop Ginyu, 1-drop Bulma kind of going into yellow, and yes, obviously there's going to be battle protection, but the fact that now we have an early game way to be able to kind of deal with cards like that also has combo power and it's not something like I-Beam, I think makes it significantly better. I do think the ability to hit 2 is a neat thing on I-Beam, but now that we actually have this, I think this is significantly better, especially when we consider that there's some cross synergies in a card that we're going to see in just a moment. Then we've got Korin, which is kind of neat. Neat, though, I think is as far as it goes. It's a 1 cost, 5k power, 5k combo with a permanent. Reduce the cost of extras with Korin Tower in their special traits in your hand by green and 1. So specifically what this does is it allows Senzu Bean to be free, or at least the activate battle portion. If you use the activate main, you won't have to pay the initial 2 for the cost of the card, but you'll still have to pay the 3 energy to gain the life. Though it does make the life gain more relevant. If you do have a Korin set up and your opponent was never able to do anything against it, now you are in a position where paying 3 for life gain is actually much more relevant than paying 5. And of course, on defense, just the fact that you can use a Senzu Bean for free is pretty good. The problem is that it's a 1-drop, it's a 5k. It's like the most vulnerable card that could literally be printed. So in that state, I don't think it's anything that you look to include, but the fact that there's some versatility in how you might want to play out your Senzu Bean strategies in green is kind of neat. Then we've got Karoni, Pisa, and Piroski, 1 cost Earthlings with 5k power and 10k combo. Earthlings are actually going to matter quite a bit in green. We're going to see that in a moment. So the biggest thing is the fact that it's a 1-drop Earthling, but otherwise it's just a blocker. Nothing too crazy to say there. We've seen this in other strategies. Not necessarily a good card, but if you're on a budget and looking to play more Earthling stuff for some of the support we're going to see in a moment, hey, it exists. Then we've got Krillin, 2-drop 20k 0 combo Earthling on play. Look at 5 cards at the top of your deck, reveal it to 1 Android 18 or up to 1 extra card and add it to your hand. Place the rest at the bottom of your deck in a random order. So just adding more to the notion that Krillin benefits the Android strategies. I will say the fact that Krillin is not an Android himself does have that anti-synergy, since a lot of the Android decks really want a density of Androids to make all of their effects come together and work. So a little quirky there, especially with the 0 combo, kind of makes it hard to want to include. But if you are that type of deck that really wants that added consistency, hey, the card exists there. Then we got Android 17, 3-drop 25k critical, very similar to the red Goku. The benefit that Android 17 has is that he can be played off of the Android 18 Self-Awakener, and there's additional Android synergies there. So not much to say, 25k critical. The fact that it's in Androids obviously helps, since that wants to be the more mid-rangier color. Neat inclusion, nothing too crazy, but hey, the synergies exist. Then we've got Android 20, 3 cost a 20k with a 5k combo. Activate main, discard 1 card from your hand and KO this card. Choose up to 1 of your Android 17 cards and switch it to active mode. Honestly, this card's a little bit wonky, but the fact that you're able to turn any of your Android 17s into a dual attacker is really cool. Obviously, Androids lend themselves to being the more mid-ranger green deck, so you have the ability to, on the previous turn, go into a 3-drop and then play Android 20, attack into something, then discard a card, restand that 3-drop and do things. I think the most impactful target for this is obviously the Android 17 and 18. They are viable targets for this. So you can turn your 40k double striker into a dual attacker as well. But then there's a question that, like, if you were able to play your initial Android 17 and 18, wouldn't you have been better off just playing another one as opposed to playing the Android 20? I don't know. But these are things that you can do. And the fact that it can scale with future design. Again, like I was saying, a lot of these are looking for card names or traits, not specific colors. So there is a future in which we can actually use Android 20 in any other style deck. And right now we're seeing Android 17s and things like red. So maybe in the future, there'll be a red-green deck where we'll have a really strong Android 17 that we can then make a dual attacker. And I think those kinds of considerations will be fun for the future. Nothing we can do within set 2, but nice things to think about when the design of the game goes there. And another one of those cards that we slot in and say, hey, when multicolor comes around, what do we got to play with? From there, we've got Cell, first form Cell, which is nice to see. I really thought we were only going to see perfect Cell based on what we saw from the leader, but the fact that we're seeing some other forms is very much welcome. 2 cost 15k, 10k combos, a little bit under the curve there. Does have an activate main, however. Once per turn, place 1 card with Earthling in special traits from your energy into your drop. This card gets 15k power for the turn. And this is where that energy manipulation really comes in with Cell. Obviously, I think you still want to go big, but if you ever want to play a more mid-rangey style, then you can constantly use this, like this Cell's ability and other destruction abilities to get yourself down to 5 energy. Then your leader will get you back up to 6, and you kind of use that recursion from there. And a 2 cost 30k attacker is very much welcome, but I think that's warranted the cost of blowing up one of your own energies. But this is where we're seeing that Earthling synergy. So a lot of what Cell is aiming to do is you play a lot of these cheap 1-drop, 2-drop Earthlings that you then cycle into energy after that. And that's a big theme of what Cell is aiming to do if you're leaning to play very much Cell the way that the devs have designed Cell to be. From there, we've got some backpage support. Backpage support being support that lends itself to older archetypes. And here we've got 3-drop Sun Goku, 15k power, 5k combo. Activate main once per turn. If your leader is a Sun Gohan childhood, choose up to 1 of your opponent's battle cards with a cost of 5 or less and add it to its owner's energy in rest mode. Then add this card to your energy in rest mode. This is very interesting. The fact that we get to send the card to its energy is now a way for green to be able to remove cards without KOing, which is very important when you consider that there's a lot of KO protection in set 2 and presumably onwards. So the fact that this gets around that is really cool. Although I think this cost is like way worse, just because the fact that like it goes into their energy means that you're ramping your opponent as well, which in some decks may not matter, but oftentimes it makes a big difference. But thankfully it's optional. You don't have to do it. So for Gohan decks, oftentimes this will just be another destructive strength that prevents you essentially from ever whiffing, especially since it's a Goku, it's a Saiyan, meaning that you are almost always, at least between this and destructive strength, going to be able to ramp on 3. So the consistency is super welcome. The fact that it's combo is super welcome. The fact that it's a Goku means that there's other cross synergies with the rest of the Green Saiyan stuff. And it has the option of getting rid of an opponent's battle card if you really needed to, which is kind of nice. But odds are you're only going to do it for yourself, and you're just going to go ahead and take that ramp. Then we've got the 2-drop Sun Gohan Childhood, 20k power, 0 combo. On play, place 1 card from your energy in your drop. Add the top card of your deck to your energy. Obviously, this doesn't do anything for us other than sometimes set up our drop. But if you're going to be playing a deck that wants to do this, your leader can probably do that effect anyways, or other cards can. So the only benefit really comes if you have the 5-drop Selku that then replaces, and now you're effectively ramping 1 for 2. Which could be welcome, but I think the fact that it's a 2-card combo in that form, we'd rather lean on our 1 cards that ramp us, and at least we can use combo power in those other cards as opposed to this one. So card's neat, it exists, but I don't think it's something we kind of want to find ourselves leaning into anytime soon. Then we've got Chi-Chi. So we got more consistency in our 1-drops, which is very much welcome. 1 cost, a 5k power, 5k combo. On play, look at 5 cards from the top of your deck, reveal up to 1 Sun Goku or 1 Sun Gohan Childhood and add it to your hand. Place the rest at the bottom of your deck in a random order. Now, while I do think that this is neat that it works with the 1-drop searchers and allows us to find some of our ramp pieces, specifically the 3-drop Goku that we just saw, allows us to find Selku, it also allows us to find big, powerful cards like the Life Gain Gohan, like the Secret Rare to allow us to board wipe. The fact that that is now searchable is really cool. Now, I will say there are a number of cards in green that are not Goku and Gohan, so you are really going to have to make that consideration. It's not as wide-ranging as the one-drop Gohan that's able to find Saiyan stuff. That's a lot more wide-ranging. But just having that added consistency is with the fact that they are pushing the Gohan deck to being a lot more Gohan Goku stuff is very much welcome. And that's kind of a theme for a lot of what we're seeing in set 2 is that they're really trying to bind a lot of the strategies around certain characters. So we're seeing starter Vegeta just have more stuff that are just Vegetas plus like some Bulma stuff, right? We're seeing the Gohan strategy leaning into more Goku and Gohan. We're seeing the androids tied to androids. So it does seem that they're really trying to push that like, hey, if you're this character's deck, you very often want to lean in on a lot of that character and a lot of that character supporting cast. And this is one of those scenarios where we might be seeing Gohan decks very much push towards being a very, which it already is given Selku, but a very Gohan and Goku forward deck. Then we've got Trunks Future, 4-cost 40k, big beefy stats, 5k combo, end of your turn, place 1 card from your energy to your drop. That's a cost right there. Obviously, it's not a cost if you have Selku, but nevertheless, that's iffy. The fact that you can attack the leader is cool. The fact that for 4 energy, you get a 40k, I just don't know that warrants the cost, especially since it's a 5k combo, which means if you're not in a position to be able to start blowing up your own energy, then it's a little bit suspect, especially since it's the end of your turn. So it can happen multiple times. So like there's a world where you're up against yellow and like if you don't have a Selku and you play this, then they stun your card and now you're actually just net neutral on energy every single turn unless you're ramping. So it's really, really bad. And if you have a Selku, maybe they get rid of your Selku and then they just leave Trunks on board stunned or whatever. Like it's, I don't know. Don't get me wrong. For 40,000 is like really good stat line, but it is very much a real cost. Moving on, we've got Piccolo, 3-drop, 25k, 5k combo on play. Choose one of your Kami battle cards and add it to your energy in rest mode. So like I was saying, Kami's got some additional synergy. The fact that this Piccolo is really neat. How good is that? I don't know. But I do think it is a generic way to be able to use ramp, which is neat. The only problem is that it's not searchable ramp, so you're going to have to hard draw into it. So I think it's one of those cards where like, neat, this exists. We probably don't even care about it for now, and we worry about it maybe in the future when we get additional Kami cards. But the fact that it exists now means that you can explore it if you want. I just don't think it warrants the lack of consistency that you would be losing versus kind of just having other cards do the similar same things. From Piccolo, we've got a Bulma, 1-drop, 5k power, 10k combo, Earthling. So again, relevant because a lot of the Cell stuff wants you to use Earthlings. Activate main once per turn, discard 1 card from your hand and draw 1 card. Doesn't net you a card, but it allows to up your consistency. It is a 10k combo 1-drop, which is kind of relevant for that as well. I don't know that you really want to run it because a lot of the other 1-drops replace themselves. This isn't necessarily replacing itself, which probably makes it worse than just running like the different cantrips that we're running. There's a balance there because it's an Earthlings and some of the things you want to do is an Earthling, but nevertheless, I don't know. I think a lot of the ways that green gets around being able to live early is the fact that you're constantly playing these 1-drops that replace themselves, and the fact that Bulma doesn't do that makes it a little bit of a tougher include. Then we've got Broly. What? Yeah, I mean, every leader from set 1 is getting some form of support in set 2, and no surprise here that we're additionally getting some Broly support. 7-cost, 40k, 10k combo, so very solid numbers. Activate main once per turn. If your leader is a Broly, choose one of your battle cards and one of your opponent's battle cards and add them to their owner's energy in rest mode. So again, more removal that gets around KOing. I just don't know that this is the one that you want to be. I don't know that you want to ramp your opponent. I don't know that like green will often have cards that you actually want to remove yourself to then do this kind of thing. Cause like your cantrips will probably be all gone by the time that this happens. And like, if you're at 7, odds are in a Broly deck, you're actually probably at 8. And I'd rather just kind of play the 8 cost opposed to doing this. So I think it's fine. I think it's a cool inclusion. Naturally, like combos with like Paragus, where once that gets KO'd, you can get this. So you can combo it early. If you play Paragus and KO Paragus, you can get this back in your hand earlier, but you can get this back in your hand afterwards. But I don't think that's that great. So card's fine. It's cute. It exists, but I don't think it's one that's going to see a lot of usage. From there, we've got Hercule, 2-cost, 10k power, 10k combo on play. You have 6 or more energy, add up to 2 cards with a cost of 1 or less, and Earthling in their special traits from your drop to your hand. This is really cool, right? In the late game, you have a 2-cost 10k combo that's able to get 2 more cards, which are potentially 10k combos if you're getting something like Bulma. So it's very much the same thing as like Go Tanks, where in the late game, you can play 4-drop blue Go Tanks, get yourself a Goten and a Trunks, boost up on combo, close out the game from there. So this is one of those cards that like might be sneakily good. Something to consider if the Earthling archetype ever comes around to being worth it. I don't know that you can afford the deck space, but the fact that it exists, in my opinion, is quite welcome. Then we've got Awakening to Perfect Form, 7-cost Android extra card. Activate main, place 1 cell with a cost of 3 from your energy or battle area in your drop. Play up to 1 cell with a cost of 8 from your hand. And the cell that this is specifically targeting, I think, is the vanilla that we saw at the very beginning. I don't know if this is worth it. I don't know that spending or playing the vanilla in this deck and also having this extra card to like cheat cost one time is really what you're looking for, especially since you can probably just play the cell for 8. Again, this is just like an additional card that's making it like a 2-card combo. So you're just like lowering your consistency for the sake of mana cheating by 1. Odds are this isn't where you want to be, in my opinion. I don't think this is all that great. So neat that it exists, and there's a world in which playing this means that you can have 2 energy up as cell as opposed to just the 1, which means you can have things like Senzu Bean and stuff live after having using your 8-drop. But I don't know. I don't think it's worth it. And again, this is almost like having absorption mechanics. So I'm glad that they're thinking of cards like these. I just think these are really boring and unfortunately kind of lame way to do it, if I'm being totally honest. So I look forward to them revisiting these absorption mechanics, revisiting fusion mechanics like we saw with the Goku Black stuff, but hopefully do it in a way that's not just like, hey, we did it, but realistically these cards aren't playable because all they're doing is cheating cost by 1, and I don't think that's really worth it in how a lot of these decks play out. So something with a little bit more juice would be welcome. Then we got some spicy extra cards after that. We start off with Tragedy in Gingertown, 3-cost extra card, Android, activate main. If your leader is Cell, choose any number of your battle cards with Earthling in their special traits and add them to your energy in rest mode. So the way that this will play out, oftentimes you'll be ramping by 1, but there are some high roll synergies where maybe you are actually ramping by 3. So on turn 3, on turn 1, you played 1 Earthling. On turn 2, you played 2 1-drops. And then on turn 3, you just go right into this, which will ramp you from 3 to 6. It's pretty nasty. Then you go on to 7 the turn after that. Pretty gross. I will say it takes you off being at 5 energy, which means you're not using your leader ability. But then the turn after that, you're able to go into your bigger play. So is it worth it? I don't know. I think it's a very interesting card. I don't know that it curves out perfectly, and it kind of depends on how you settle on your 1-drops, especially since it's a dead ramp card. If your opponent was able to get rid of your 1 and 2-drops or your 1-drops, however it may be, in the earlier turns, which makes that level of consistency a little bit jarring. It's a pretty high payoff, right? Ramp 3 is kind of insane on turn 3, but it does come at the cost of your opponent kind of letting it happen. And with the amount of removal that we're getting in the 1 and 2 cost slot, I don't think that's going to be something that's a real dream. However, this next card I think is much more real. We have Sal Games Arena, 4-cost extra card Field, which is nice. I love that we're getting more field cards. Activate main, switch this card to rest mode. If your leader is Sal, so leader locking, which is a little bit lame, but that's fine. Look at the top card of your deck and add it to your hand or add it to your energy in rest mode. So I think this card is incredibly powerful, not because of the ramp, oddly enough, but just because like on turn 4, if you can get this uncontested and kind of have like a chill turn after that, you're in a position where every single turn you are drawing an additional card. Uncontested, so it's like the 1-drop getting you, except your opponent can't get rid of it. Now, obviously you can't play multiple copies, but the fact that you can do that and also have the option to be able to ramp, I think is insane. I think 4 cost is exactly where this card needs to be because I think it's absolutely crazy. I think as a Cell player, you are in a very healthy position. If you're able to put this down, your opponent wasn't able to aggress you because of it, and then you're just kind of coasting from there. I think this could be pretty gross. I think being able to draw 2 cards a turn is super nasty. And the fact that you can ramp it if it's something you don't care for in your hand, like let's say you see an additional Cell games, well, we're just going to ramp that instead. I think that's super gross. So I think this card is just slow enough that it'll probably be balanced at 4, but nevertheless is something that can run away with the game if your opponent sees it and you're not able to punish them for taking a really slow turn. And then to close out the green extras, we've got Earth Destroying Blow, 2-cost Android extra card, activate battle, choose your leader or up to 1 of your battle cards. It gets 25k power for the battle. So very much on curve for what we expect 2 energy extra cards to be. Then if you have 6 or more energy, look at the top card of your deck, add it to your hand or add it to your energy in rest mode. So again, that flexibility, I love that flexibility, super strong. Hey, would I rather ramp? Cool, I can do that. Hey, is this like a 10k combo? Is this a super combo? The fact that I get to choose where it goes makes it so much stronger. So I don't know how much play this sees because it's not often that you have 2 energy up in green. And oftentimes if you want to do that, I almost feel like you'd rather have Senzu Bean because odds are you need to prevent multiple attacks as opposed to just one big one in which green can excel at. But Cell doesn't innately have defensive capabilities in the same way that like Broly do or Son Gohan. So maybe this is the type of card that it really needs, but either way, it's an option, and I think it's a welcome one at that. And now finally, we're in yellow. So kicking it off with Whis, 4-drop, 25k, 10k combo blocker. Interesting. With an activate battle once per turn for 1, switch this card to active mode. And I love seeing cards like this. A lot of people are leaning like, oh, what are the extra cards that we're going to be able to get to play with the new Vegeta? But I think activate battles are just as important, right? The more ways that we have to sync our energy that are not just extra cards, but also battle cards. And battle cards are even better because they have combo power, which means they have usage and not just in our hand, I think is great. Do I think this card's amazing? At that point, maybe not. It is effectively a dual attacker or a dual blocker, or it can attack once and then defend once. So that flexibility is very much welcome. And I do think it has some nice numbers for that. Is that good enough, though? I'm not entirely sure. But the fact that it exists is something that I very much welcome, and I am not upset by it existing. And then we've got 5-cost Whis, which is a little bit iffy, right? In the 5-cost slot, you're contesting some really good cards out of yellow, specifically Golden Frieza. 35k with 5k combo. End of your turn, choose up to one of your rest mode cards and switch to active mode. So that's like some reverse synergies with the 3-drop Vegeta, but naturally you're in a position where like if you 4-drop Whis and then you 5-drop Whis, you can get the restand for free and then still have the energy up to be able to be a dual blocker. So there's some cross synergies there, which is exciting and kind of fun to explore. I don't think it's the way you're going to go with that deck, but the fact that, again, it exists, and I think they're not preposterous numbers, I think make it for an interesting exploration at the very least. Then we've got Ginyu. Is this the card that's going to save Ginyu? Is this the card we've all been waiting for? Unfortunately, I don't think that's the case. This is a 2-cost 15k, 10k combo. So 10k combo, very much welcome in the Ginyu package here. Activate main. Switch this card to rest mode. Choose up to 2 of your battle cards with Ginyu Force in their special traits, and they get 5k power for the turn. I don't think... this is so close, right? The fact that it is a Ginyu means that if you go for Raccoon Ginyu 2-drop SR from set 1, you're unable to go into this, which means you can't extend your plays. But Ginyu's biggest weakness was the fact that you had 20Ks, which means like if your opponent saw Frost, you were doomed. If you were playing against Broly, you were kind of doomed because you had to combo a bunch of cards. So this would boost up those cards and would allow them to attack through Frost. So there's an option there if you're playing against red, although your red matchup is bad even regardless of Frost. But hey, so with that in mind, I think this card's neat. But the fact that you can't combo it in line with the rest of like your Ginyu Raccoon extension plays makes it kind of rough. Is it the kind of card the deck really wants? Yes. I think Ginyus would have appreciated a more generic wide board Lord effect, which a Lord effect is something that buffs up an entire board of a specific archetype. I think that's a magic specific term there. But I think nevertheless, this is the kind of thing that the Ginyu package wanted and is the only real piece of support that the archetype gets from set 2. So hey, Ginyu players rejoice. I think at least you have something to play with and maybe explore to see if it helps you with your other matchups. From there, we continue the back page support with Cooler. 1 cost, 5k power, 5k combo, blocker, activate main for 3. Return this card to its owner's hand, play up to 1 Cooler with a cost of 4 from your hand. And the only target that we have is actually the set 1 SR. So don't get me wrong, this is an incredibly strong card, especially one that you get to cheat out for 3. I think that's really good, especially since you're not losing the card. You actually get the Cooler back, which is pretty hot. So it's almost like evolving this Cooler, which is pretty neat. I love the comeback of the evolve mechanic. I just think as a 1 cost 5k attacker, this is not fantastic and is going to be incredibly easy to get off the board. So the way to do it reliably would be to play it and then play the Cooler. And at that point, you are already playing the 4. So unfortunately, I think Cooler is just not worth running. But the fact that it exists and it kind of extends the Cooler stuff is at least neat in concept. Then we've got Krillin, a 2-drop 15k, 10k combo. When attacking, just 2 of your opponent's battle cards will cost 1 or less and switch them to rest mode. Very nice. I think we get most of this effect already with the 2-cost Frieza Self-Awakener, and I don't think that there's any real Earthling support to want to do this instead, but the fact that it's 10k combo is very much welcome on that front. It hits 2 targets, but again, I don't think you need to go that far. So the fact that it exists, nice, but at the moment, I don't know if we actually play it, especially since it's just a 15k. From there, we got King Cold. 4 cost, a 25k, 10k combo. So great stats. I love all the stats on King Cold, man. It's really sick. He's a blocker, so we've seen that before, but it has a when blocking once per turn, switch card to active mode. So he's actually a dual blocker and is some great synergy with Mecha Frieza. Mecha Frieza builds are actually builds that do decently well in set 1. I know it's not the most popular build, but a lot of players have actually had success in celebration events and moving forward into the set 1 meta. So the fact that we get to extend that with a King Cold that does something, is not just a vanilla and is still a 10k combo, really kind of pushes the line. The fact that the dual blocker is really neat. I don't think it's busted. I don't think it's where yellow is going to go on in terms of tier 1 meta wise, but the fact that it extends the Mecha Frieza lines, which already can sometimes be pretty good, I think is very much welcome. From there, we've got Android 18, 3 cost, 20k, 10k combo on play or when attacking. And once again, just stacking on multiple keywords, which is really powerful. You get to choose up to 1 of your opponent's battle cards and switch it to rest mode. So really gross, especially since it's on play. Sometimes you can make some awkward lines in yellow where you have to attack your opponent's leader to be able to get the when attacking to rest mode something and then kind of clear the board from there. So the fact that you can Android 18, rest something, attack into it, and then rest something else, and then attack into that with like your leader or something like that, kind of lines up some really solid plays. So I think this card is really solid, the 10k combo. The fact that yellow has a lot of 20ks makes it a little bit sketchy, but nevertheless, it's a great card, especially since it can also help you set up for your 4-drop Goku. Afterwards, that will stun cards. So I do think Android 18 is a little bit hard to protect on board. I think you can kind of get there. Then we'll be looking at 2 cards together because they kind of work together. So we're going to skip ahead on that one. We've got Sun Goten, which is a 2-cost 20k 5k combo. Same thing for the Trunks. 2-cost 20k 5k combo on play. Choose up to one of your Trunks Youth battle cards, which costs 2 or less and switch to active mode. And then with Trunks, you get to choose a Goten and switch to active mode. At some point, you're just playing a 2-drop that's just 20k. Okay, which odds bar means you can't probably attack with it because it'll just die next turn. So you kind of leave it there. And then you're playing off curve to be able to play a Trunks that then restands it. So your first one's a vanilla, and then but with bad combo power. Then your second one turns into a dual attacker. It's cute, but again, I think this is more of like a sealed thing. They're both commons. They don't have to be amazing, and I don't think they're anything more than just a cute thing you can do. But I don't think it's going to see a ton of play. From there, we move to Gohan, 2-cost 15k power 10k combo on play. Choose up to one your Piccolo battle cards with a cost of 3 and switch it to active mode. And our only target for that is currently this 3-drop Piccolo, which is a blocker. And when KO, choose up to one your battle cards and switch it to active mode. I think it's cute. You play your 3-drop Piccolo. The turn after that, you play your 2-drop Gohan. But I don't think this plays out in any real meaningful way. I don't know. I mean, the fact that Piccolo is a 25k is a good number, especially since a lot of the yellow stuff is looking to be 20k before you start to get into your 4-drops. So the bigger number is welcome, but the fact that you only have one target makes it really, really tough to include Son Gohan, even though he's a 10k combo. So like you do get that defensively, but I just don't think it's worth it. Then we've got the Super Saiyan variant, 3-cost 25k power 5k combo on play. Choose up to one of your opponent's rest mode battle cards and it can't be switched active mode during your opponent's next turn. And this is where yellow's starting to get really annoying because we're in a position now where you have a 3-cost that will freeze your opponent's card. You have a 4-cost in the Son Goku SR, and then you have the 5-cost with Golden Frieza. So effectively, if your opponent is playing in a way where they play on curve and are constantly swinging, you can effectively freeze them out of the game from ever really using any of those cards again. Early on, newer players are probably going to fall into a trap of just not knowing how to play around and are going to be very frustrated with. So these kind of things can be very powerful. Naturally, they're not permanent removal, which means your opponent can eventually work their way out of it. But this is going to add on to that yellow curve of just, hey, I can never use my battle cards, which is really gross and definitely welcome for what yellow wants to do. Then we've got Tien Shinhan, 3-cost, a 20k power, 10k combo, activate battle once per turn for 1 energy. Choose up to one of your opponent's battle cards would cost a 3 or less and switch it to rest mode. And again, activate battles. I love these because you can use these with Vegeta. And this one is a 20k, so it's not, again, the most powerful thing. But the fact that you get to Death Ball one of your opponent's cards is sweet, right? Even if it's at the cost of Tien Shinhan, you get to protect yourself. Tien Shinhan could potentially be protected by the fact that you have 3-cost Vegeta on board. Who knows? I don't know that this is like super powerful, but again, I just love that we have more options to be able to use with our Vegeta leader. Then we've got Videl, 1-cost, a 5k power, 10k combo blocker. Nothing crazy there. It is just a cheap blocker. Just added on to the fact that the color already has a ton of it. Then we've got Beerus, which is one of the weirder cards in the set. 3-cost, 20k power, 10k combo. So not terrible numbers. Critical. Neat. We love to see that. And then a permanent, your turn. If you have a Whis battle card, this card gets 5k power. But the Whis are 4s and 5 costs. So the turn you play this out is going to be a 20k. It's a crit, so you want to attack with it. But by the time you're at 3 energy, odds are your opponent's leaders awaken. So now this is kind of like vulnerable to removal, vulnerable to being attacked. And then you want to defend it and survive so that you can then get a 5k buff after that. I don't know. I don't know that it's worth it. And actually, the Whis themselves have effects. So they do curve into Beerus well. But the fact that the way this plays out with the numbers it plays out, I don't think will be as effective as doing anything else. But hey, it leans into the God of Destruction and Whis stuff and establishes it for yellow, which maybe they extend in future sets. Continuing that we support, we've got 1-drop Bulma, 5k power, 5k combo. On play, look at the top 5 cards top of your deck. Reveal up to 1 Whis, add it to your hand. Place the rest at the bottom of your deck in a random order. Again, just builds into that. If anything, I feel like this is showcasing to us that eventually in the future, yellow is going to have more Whis/Beerus support. But for right now, I think you can build a Whis deck, and I think that's fine. I just don't think it's where yellow wants to be in terms of competing with what the other decks are doing. Then we got Vegeta, 3-cost, 20k power, 5k combo. When attacking, if you have a rest mode Son Goku battle card, draw 1 card. And I do like what this is providing for the deck in terms of giving you additional draws. The fact, though, is that Gokus aren't amazing in terms of what you have. I mean, there is an amazing Goku, but the way it curves out isn't exactly where you want to be. So in terms of options, we have the 2-drop Vanilla that we got from the set. We got the 3-cost, where if your opponent has 3 or more rest mode battle cards, the card gets 5k power, so it's a 30k 3-drop, which is not bad. And then obviously the fantastic 4-drop Son Goku SR that freezes one of your opponent's cards. So there are cards that you can sequence into this Vegeta. Unfortunately, I just think at the moment you're in a position where there's not enough of a density of them to really make it hyper worth it. But I don't hate the card. I think there might be some decks that can see some good usage out of it. Maybe currently we have enough Gokus for it, or at least to tech it in. But the fact that it's a 5k combo doesn't mean you need to make some real considerations as having a card that will sometimes just kind of sit in your hand because otherwise it's just a bad vanilla. So things to consider there. Then we've got Mecha Frieza, 4 cost, a 25k power, 5k combo, blocker. And then with a 1 KO, look at the top 3 cards of your deck, reveal up to 1 card with Frieza Clan in its special traits, and add it to your hand, place the rest at the bottom of your deck in any order. 4 cost for a 25k blocker that doesn't do anything isn't amazing, even if it replaces itself, especially since it's 1 KO'd. And from the looks of it, yellow is not going to get a lot of KOs abilities off when you consider that blue is going to be a decent force in set 2 and is only going to bounce our bottom deck, and you got red that's going to neg. And then green kind of just doesn't care. So I don't think this card's amazing just because of the way that removal lines up in the game, especially when you consider that 4 cost, you can get a much more powerful blocker in the form of things like Cooler. And then we've got a Meta Cooler, which I don't understand why they printed. It's a 3 cost 20k, 5k combo. It's got blocker. And then at the end of the turn, you switch this card to active mode. So it's an attacker that can then block. But in terms of the Meta Cooler archetype, it does absolutely nothing. So why did they include this, right? Like if I'm trying to play Meta Cooler, this does nothing for me playing Meta Cooler. And I think what it is they're just adding to the diversity of the different Meta Coolers available for when they do eventually provide the archetype like a real support card. So I think this is just adding to the pool of different Meta Coolers that you can play. But at the moment, it actually does absolute 0 for the archetype and is more of just a generic yellow card, which is fine. Then we go into the extra cards. So there aren't a ton, actually, surprisingly enough, which is weird when you consider that like Vegeta really wants to be the deck that uses a bunch of activate battles, but kind of makes sense that they want you to lean into more of the battle cards so you get some combo power. So I'm like, okay, fine. We have a Time Rewound, which is exactly where the deck wants to be. It's an Angel extra card, 1 cost, activate battle opponent's turn, choose your leader or up to 1 of your battle cards, and it gets 20k power for the battle. So defensive 20k, something that is very typical for 1 cost. Then choose up to 1 of your battle cards and switch to active mode. So I get to block with Cooler, and then I get to use this, block with Cooler again. That's super neat. The fact that I get to like protect my Cooler at the same time while I was doing it. So I love what this does. Naturally, you can put yourself in a position where like you defend the attack that's coming, and then you restand a Bulma, and then you use Bulma's ability to be able to rest mode another 3-drop or 4-drop or what have you. So this allows you to be able to make the types of plays that yellow really wants to do, especially that Vegeta really wants to do, with the ways that a lot of its cards work, the way that the blocker works. So I think this card's sick. I think it's super key and exactly the kind of card that yellow Vegeta wanted to see success in set 2. And then we've got Energy Blast Volley, 1 cost, a Saiyan extra card, activate main, choose all your opponent's battle cards and switch them to rest mode. Okay. I mean, it's funny. At the moment, I don't think that's that relevant. I think oftentimes your opponent's only really going to have a card that you want to put in rest mode. So at that point, it's like, I would rather Crusher Ball because at least it replaces the card. But this exists for sometime in the future, right? It chooses everything. And yellow is only ever going to get more cards that care about things in rest mode. Maybe you have cards that get stronger with the more stuff that's in rest mode. So the fact that this exists is neat. I don't think it's very useful right now, but is just cheap enough and just generic enough that maybe at some point, for whatever reason, it allows us to get there, especially since it doesn't target. So if we ever get things like Barrier, which I hope not, but if we ever get the kinds of cards that have some kind of protection from being targeted, at the very least, this gets around that, which has its own very important usage. And with that, if you've made it this far, you've seen it all. And I'm very excited for what we saw here. I think there are a lot of gems that extend a lot of what set 1 is doing and opens up what a lot of the set 2 leaders are going to do. I still have a couple of question marks. I'm not entirely sure how to play the set 2 Zamasu leader. I don't think any of the cards that we saw in the whole entire set tells me like the right way to be able to play that deck. So I'm going to definitely be spending some time in the lab trying to figure that out. But with that said, we now know every single card in set 2. So I hope you guys are excited to get brewing. And I'm definitely going to be kicking off the rest of the next couple of weeks, getting you guys ready for set 2 Blazing Aura format. And with that, I'll catch you guys on the next one.